TikTok. It's time to rock. May the tone be with you, Hos. May the tone be with you, Brad. It's good to see you guys.
Good to see you too, fella. How you been?
Not bad, not bad. Looking forward to this show. As usual, the 5150 show is always a highlight on my weekly calendar. Well, fortnightly calendar. We do the 5150 show. We might have to do something about that. I don't know. We can talk about that a little bit later on. But I look forward to this show in particular because if you guys aren't already aware, we may have talked about this album in the past, but Hos's contribution to this album, I'm sure, is going to get everybody interested and focused on why this album is so cool and why it may not be. Who knows? You know, we've got some different opinions. You know, we're not going to surprise everybody now in our introduction what we think about this album. But Brad, it's always good to see you too, brother.
Likewise, may the tone be with you, brothers. And it's great to see you on this, what is a Sunday or Saturday afternoon here in Australia. So I don't know where it is for the rest of you in the world, but Andrew's 2 hours ahead of us. So he's always one step foot, ahead of us. Hos and myself.
I've got my eye on you two.
He's not ahead of his time. He's ahead of our time.
Yeah. That's even better. Yeah.
I've got my eye on you guys. Look, guys, it's as I said, it's a pleasure to be with you. Last week, Brad and I, on the off week, we did a show with a young guy, Halen, and he said that he's going to be in the chat joining us talking about this album. So I just want to do a special shout out to Halen, a young 13-year-old hot guitarist, an Australian, which is always a good thing. When you're at this part of the world, we celebrate anybody from our two countries that's involved or in love with EVH because we were inspired by the same guy when we were around the same age. So we're going to talk a little bit about that in the introduction too. And I want to do one special shout out, well, two special shout outs. One to Warren, who's always in our channel, going through some treatment at the moment. So Warren, brother, we are praying for you and we are thinking about you, and we are always looking forward to you jumping on with us for a live show. And did we decide that I was going to do the birthday shout out?
Yes.
Birthday shout.
Oh,
yes.
Okay, all right. Gosh, I've got all these things going on. And happy birthday, Eddie Van Halen. It was his birthday week just gone, so social media accounts have been blitzed by birthday greetings for the great man. So our channel, Brad and Hos, wants to participate and offer birthday greetings to Eddie.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy birthday, Ed. It would have been good, obviously, like we were meant to be here in Melbourne anyway, bringing in his birthday, Brad, at the Corner Hotel, which wasn't to be. But happy birthday to Ed. It's always, January 26th here in Australia, of course, is Australia Day as well. And so I think it's very nice of the Australian government to have declared Ed's birthday a public holiday. Well done.
Well, good to see your government's done something good lately.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, happy birthday. Look, it was one of those days that you put on, Van Halen all day, just listening to all eras of Van Halen. I had a great day of just listening to, a mixed sort of bag of Ed Van Halen stuff, pretty much everything from, the first couple of albums to even the Gary era. Just put a lot of music on and just, celebrated that way. So the day was just listening to a ton of Van Halen, which was good.
Yeah, exactly. And, I spent some extra time actually reading through some of the great Van Halen books we have at our disposal now, and dug a bit more, did some rereading actually of Brad Talinsky and Chris Gill's book Eruption, which is great.
Yeah. And to be honest with you, all things work out for a reason. So I think your gig being rescheduled till later on, Hos, has been a blessing because I think I did a leg injury or something at work, and I've been sort of limping a bit. So I don't know how the quad boxes, mate. But yeah.
Well, it's just as well because I couldn't have had you dropping one of the quad boxes, with with a sore leg. So
Yeah.
especially since two of them are probably not going to be mine, but
I was more worried about, carrying the amplifier heads and things like that. They're the things you can't drop, mate. You can drop a quad box, let's be honest.
Yeah, you probably can. You probably can. If you really had to, you could probably just hang the speakers on their own from the roof with some speaker wire and they'd be all right. In fact, that'd be cool. You could just have them like a mobile, like on top of a kid's pram and just have them all spinning around and on top of the stage. Like a free in the air Leslie,
Imagine the phasing effect you could get from doing that.
Yeah. I don't know if it'd be great. Maybe we'll have to try it one day, Brad. We'll string them all up at a rehearsal studio and see what happens.
Yeah, 100%. Well, in saying that, we'll have to catch up soon, Hos.
Yeah, we
between drinks, so we'll definitely catch up soon.
Yeah, it's been far too long. We'll definitely do that. We got heaps of stuff to muck around with in the studio and have some fun.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And we shouts out to Ed for his birthday this week, but I think it was a couple of weeks ago was the anniversary of 1984, and that's why we decided to do this record again.
Great.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that was a good choice. But I just want to say, Hos, I've been stalking your social media accounts and I've been watching the comments in relation to the video that you put out for the Corner Bar gig. My gosh, people are really, really cool about the video that you posted and obviously keen to see what happens with the gig.
Yeah, thank you, brother. The response to the little couple of short video promos I've put up so far has been fantastic. At the moment, with the Melbourne restrictions, we're looking at a roughly 50% capacity room. But I mean, it's almost 3 months between now and then. I'm pretty confident that unless anything else happens in Melbourne, they'll end up expanding it to a full capacity room, which is great because the tickets are, they're selling steadily, and then they're not going to, if it's a 50% capacity room, we'll probably end up selling out long before the gig. So that's really good. But even if it's 50 capacity, we'll still squeeze 370 people in there and that'll be good, because obviously it's not a huge room, but if we can get full capacity, we might get as much as nearly 800. So that'd be wild,
Yeah.
Wow. That would be awesome.
Yeah,
that'd be awesome. Yeah, it'll be a hell of a night regardless. But if you could get a full house, that would be amazing.
Yeah, and as we've toyed around with and mentioned before, it's going to be lots of fun. We're probably going to do some red, white, and black striped Easter egg hunts, and there's going to be some cool video messages coming from people that I've been lucky enough to make contact with all around the world while we're not on stage too. So it's just, I think the energy of it is still going to feel like a birthday party,
Yeah.
Mikey, Mojo in the chat, bro, saying bring fair warning to the States. Hold your horses, Mikey. It's going to come. Hold on.
Look, obviously, if we can at some point, if the travel allows it, we would love to do that. That's a no-brainer for us, for sure. We would love to. We've actually on the YouTube video of the Melbourne Guitar Show, we've had a lot of comments from people, especially in the States, saying that they would love us to bring it over there. So one day, if we can, we will.
If you need a roadie, I'll come.
Indeed. Oh, no, you're coming for sure, brother.
Can I just say, look, I've watched your promo stuff, like Andrew just spoke about it a fair few times now, about 100. And I have to say, man, it's so exciting. It revs you up. There's so much energy. You guys sound amazing. So really looking forward to it.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. I'm actually thinking that I might put a third promo with some different songs out in the next day or two. So, keep an eye out for that. Maybe something a little bit different in there for the people. I mean, I know you guys have seen most of its content, but there'll be a lot of people that haven't yet.
Yeah. So anyone that doesn't know what we're talking about, you have to go and check out Hosford, Simon Hosford, Simon_Hosford on Instagram, and I'm sure you'll see all the good stuff we're talking about there.
Awesome. And you've got Keith Campbell's sticking his hand up to be a SoCal roadie, so you got plenty of friends, guys, when you get over there.
Thank you,
as usual. But Brad, the Backdoor Man, mentioned something a little bit earlier, you know, that was the anniversary for 1984 a couple of weeks ago, which inspired us, Hos, didn't it, to get together and talk about this game changer album. So before we get into showing some pics and doing your intro proper, I just think it might be a good opportunity for us to talk about, just from a personal point of view, when we came across this album, what we were doing, what, you know, from that perspective. So I'll go first. So I heard the album when the album came out and just fell in love with it. It was everything that I wanted as a young guy. But specifically, Hos, one of the reasons why I have a lot of emotional attachment to this album, and I've mentioned to this Brad before, we managed here in this part of the world to get 2 videos, Jump and Panama. So for me, the 2 videos and this album are heads and tails, because for the first time ever, we managed to get to see what Van Halen may have looked like, besides stills and guitar magazines, as a band. So, you know, it blew me away, Hos.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I mean, I used to just stick blank VHS tapes in when MTV was on and just record everything. And then from one VHS recorder to another, make my own little, I'd cut out all the dross, you know, and the dregs and the stuff that I wasn't into, and I'd make my own little compilation videos. And then, you know, and then during the week, I would just watch that over and over again. And you're right, I mean, this album really came out in the MTV era, and no one was better at making fun clips at that time that were full of character and life and a sense of humor than Van Halen. So, you know, obviously that went a long way to probably bolstering the singles and the album. But also, I think for like what you're saying, for the first time down here in you know, New Zealand and Australia, we got to really get a sense of the band visually.
Correct. And if you have a look there next to you, you'll see Eddie flying there on some wire, with his 5150. So you know, that just give him a tickle. That just blew me away watching that. That just encapsulated, you know, one of the reasons why we do this show, guys, and everyone in the chat, it's because we have fun. Rock and roll is about fun. Music's about fun. And if you can hear that part of what music is in the music, if you can hear some fun, that's great. But if you can see it, you know, like Brad said it before when we watched your video clips, clearly you guys are having a ball making that video. You know, it's just, and that transcends what, you know, the dreariness or whatever's happening in your life today. I know it sounds deep, but it's true.
No, you're 100% correct. You know, when we did that production rehearsal, we were having a ball. We were like kids in a candy store, and we realized, you know, we're getting to play the music of our heroes and that we grew up with. But one of the things that ever since I was really, really young, you know, and you'd see these Van Halen video clips on MTV. But then, of course, when Live Without a Net came out, then we all got to see like a full concert vibe. And it really impressed upon me in such a deep way that's really, to me, what the essence of rock and roll is. I mean, and of course, around mid-'80s, there are a lot of great rock bands, and especially other LA rock bands, that it was a more serious thing. You know, it was all about black leather and studs and you know, it had a different energy. It was kind of a darker, almost more, you know, they'd be wearing pentagrams and all of that stuff. And so that was kind of the other side of rock and roll, which I like too. You know, I bought all those records just the same. But to me, the true essence of what rock and roll is about fun. And to me, no other band did it as good as Van Halen, because they managed to blend that incredible irreverence and sense of humor with some of the most amazing musicianship ever in a rock band.
You guys have pretty much captured everything I was going to say. But I mean, for me, the visual aspect, the film clips, you know, Jump and Panama, that every time I listen to those songs, I'm picturing those film clips in my head. So that you know, the whole vibe of the band was captured on this record. That it's just when the first time I heard this record, I'd heard the hits. I'd heard Jump, I'd heard Panama, but I hadn't really listened to the other songs really. And, as we go through the track listing and the rankings, and I think I might have mentioned this once before, there were moments where you had to sort of go back and listen for a second time the song because you get lost the first time just trying to absorb it all. So, for me, it was definitely a game-changing moment to hear this record, 100%.
Yeah. I think you're right, guys, and we will never get sick and tired of talking about it. But Hos, you just mentioned something really, really interesting too, and because we're always about connecting dots here, we're trying to do family tree pins and needles on the music board, aren't we? We're always trying to do that. So for us, it was 1984, the two videos that came with that, then Live Without a Net. When we got Live Without a Net, Hos and Brad, that was the Old Testament and the New Testament all in one, wasn't it? That was everything.
Yeah.
That's the perfect way to put it, brother. The Old Testament and the New Testament. And, as I'm sure I can say, as far as we're concerned, both the gospel, it was, a video clip is one thing, gave you a sense of their fun, shooting a video clip, and the mucking around and all of that. But then to see that same level of fun while they were actually playing a full concert was mind-boggling to me at 12 years old. Absolutely. Because they may as well have been flying from trapezes in Live Without a Net like they were in the Panama video and playing the same, because to me they were jumping around almost the same amount.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, it was quite incredible. But yeah, that's a good way to put it. The Old Testament and the New Testament, and all those things. My MTV VHS tapes and that Live Without a Net VHS tape. I wouldn't even be able to count the amount of times that I played those.
Awesome. Hey, Brad, do you want to do a shout out now, or do you want me to flick through some of the picks? What do you guys want to do?
Go through some of the picks first, Andrew, and I'm just trying to get my chat happening, mate. So
all right, no problem, guys, no problem. So as usual, we'll always do the best that we can, guys, to highlight your comments. So bear with us. Just give me a second, and before I get the screen up and go through a couple of picks. Obviously, you guys are more than welcome to give your rankings on any of the songs and your impressions of the album. I know Mickey sent me a message yesterday, and he said that this album was a game changer for him when it came out. Keith Campbell said the same thing as well. So, and we'll talk a little bit more about why it is as well during the introduction, because, we've got plenty to talk about. Hold on. Okay, so this is just a montage, guys, here of, give me a second. Can you guys see that? That's just a montage there that we put together.
Yep, awesome.
That's the album cover and the back cover.
Yep.
And here's the band. Look at that.
Fantastic.
There with the Frankie. What clip is that from, guys? That was the third video that was released.
Yep. Look at that. Look at them all in their suits and the white gloves. Fantastic.
That was from the Hot for Teacher.
Indeed.
Andrew, can you go back to the last photo before the Hot for Teacher one?
Yeah.
What's is that a badge on his guitar strings, or like has he put a badge?
I noticed that too. It looks like it's a badge, isn't it?
There you go. I've never seen that before. Interesting.
So if anybody in the chat knows what that is, whether it's a badge or a sticker, let us know. And top marks for Brad, the backdoor man's beady little eyes.
I don't miss a trick, mate.
We know that. And here's the master himself, Look at that.
Great picture.
Yeah.
Now, I always love these jeans because Neil Young also on the back cover of After the Gold Rush, I think, or maybe even on the inside sleeve, he's wearing a pair of jeans with leather patches. Always cool. But
Yeah.
I gotta say, Eddie wore them better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Andrew, we'll have to get you a pair of pants made like that, mate. You can wear them around.
I don't know. Thank you. So long. Yeah. So long. That's the only pants. Don't you talk about those other pants that the lead singer wears.
No.
I don't know anything about this bass. It looks like it's a Rickenbacker, doesn't it? Yes, it is. There it is. There. That's a Rickenbacker. Okay.
I've never seen that photo. I've never seen that bass. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
These are great photos, Andrew.
I just pinched them off a website.
Yeah.
Google, brother. Google.
That's the research.
And there's David in his glory.
Yep. Yeah.
And there's Dave and Ed. Look at that. Wow.
That's awesome.
And there's Ed there playing the 5150.
Yep.
Fantastic pictures. You've done really well here.
5150 looks pretty brand new there, doesn't she?
Yeah. Look, absolutely brand new. Yeah. I mean, one of the things that we'll get into is that the Kramer endorsement and the 5150 guitar he had basically just got before recording 1984. So that was like one of the other big changes.
Alex.
And I thought we better put that in. Keep Jerry happy.
Jerry, if you're watching it in the chat, say hello. And that's what everyone's expecting at the Corner Hotel, mate.
Yes.
The drums look like Anthony Calia's microphone shield, microphone sleeve, anyway.
Is he going to have a bin beside him so he can relieve on that too, during the gig or not?
We've discussed it, but I just told him that to make use of the bin, he's just going to have to drink a lot more beer than he's used to before the show. That's the deal. Yeah.
And there's the boys there.
Oh dear.
Look at them. Look at the hands.
Yeah.
Do you reckon they're arseless chaps there that David Lee Roth's wearing?
I don't know, brother.
I thought you'd have close-ups, Andrew. Come on.
No. There's the 5150. Look at that.
Sorry, Andrew. I had to do it.
That's all right. Look at these leather jeans. Aren't they cool? Hands up, guys, in the chat, whoever ever made a pair of jeans and got someone in their family, because guys generally don't do this kind of leather work, do they?
No, guys, I know we're doing that kind of leather work.
And there's Dave.
Definitely
holding court
up there.
Look at that.
Yeah.
I think that's hold on, gents. Oh, and there's that's the famous.
Oh yeah, the mascot from was that an extermination company? Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
I can't remember that. Western Exterminators or something they were called. Someone in the chat will know the exact thing.
Oh, and there's our screenshot. That's our screenshot, ladies and gentlemen, for the show. So
lovely.
Thank you, bro. Thank you, guys. I always take the opportunity to flick any pics that we decided that would flick through. So that's cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Awesome.
I think it's a good time to acknowledge a few people here in the chat. What do you guys think?
Absolutely.
All right, I'll go through and say hello to everyone. We've got Keith Campbell in the chat. We've got Ellen Voroshin, my mother. We've got Gretch Zeppelin. We've got John Z351. Good to see you, brother. Helene O'Hara. We have Nelson. Nelson's in the chat. We've got Charmaine. We have got Johnny Arbreaker. We'll also have Tim Thomas. Good to see you. Mike Rogers. Some dude that, we might have to time out later on. Simon Hosford. He's a bit of a cheeky guy. We've got to look at Mikey Mojo. Thanks for all the amazing pictures and links and everything you send us through the week. It's I get a never-ending supply from Mikey. Thank you so much.
Cheers, Mikey. Does the same too. Thank you, brother.
Yeah, he's all over it. We've got who have I missed here? We've got Teresa. Sorry if I missed you, Teresa. We have. I can't go back any further, guys. If I've missed you, I apologize. My chat does play up from time to time, and I'll have to get this fixed. But thank you guys for joining us. We've got about 30 people in the chat here. It's great to see you all.
It's a quality crowd, and yeah, I'll do a shout out at the end as well, everybody. So everyone in the anyone that joins the show between now and then, stick around, and I'll do a shout out at the end.
Awesome. I want to do a special shout out to Teresa because she's been advertising our show in Portuguese for her Brazilian contacts. So thank you, Teresa, for that. Always appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, Teresa. Thanks for everything.
Yeah, thanks everyone for the support. While we're on it, if you're watching and you haven't subscribed already, please do and give us a thumbs up.
Indeed.
So why don't we get into the album, guys? We're anxiously awaiting. We're at that sort of 28-minute mark, which usually means by now we hit the album. What do you think?
Let's hit it. Well, why don't I start by doing like just a little bit of the background on perhaps why this album sounds the way it does for the people that wouldn't be so familiar with all the little details, because there was a lot going on at this time with the band. And to me, this album kind of is like a bridge album between the last of the David Lee Roth era and obviously what became the beginning of the Sammy Hagar era, which no one knew at the time. What no one knew in 1984 was this was really the last meaningful time anyone was going to hear David Lee Roth on a full album, Obviously, like there was stuff that happened much later on, but all that stuff to me kind of felt a bit piecemeal, I mean, obviously this was like the real back in the day kind of lineup. And, I think that there was a lot of tensions and everything starting to brew. And it, in Ed's own words, he said that him and Roth never really got along. They were so different that it was the fire and ice that actually made it work, that the whole thing was kind of, just built out of chaos in the same way kind of that, like you could say that the Big Bang and the beginning of the universe came out of chaos. Ed's words were always that, him and Roth were just such different characters, but they made it work for a pretty long time. And it was obviously just getting to a point where the tensions were just getting really thick, and so there were lots of sort of precursors to what was going to eventuate after the album got recorded and released. But, Ed was starting to get offers to do a couple of other things outside of the band, which he took, like he did a film soundtrack and he played on a couple of people's albums. But then, of course, famously, he ended up doing the session for Quincy Jones and Michael Jackson and did the Beat It solo, which he thought at the time that no one was really ever going to hear. And all the other guys in the band were away on holidays. And this was long before social media and the internet and mobile phones. So he couldn't call them up. Like Dave was down in the Amazon, I believe. And Alex was doing something else in Switzerland or whatever. And so he just did it on a whim. He got called. He went down the same day and took the tapes and that's how it happened. But obviously when that song got released, it went number one, and of course everyone around the world heard it, and all the guys in the band heard it and sort of forgave him at first, but then didn't forgive him later for a reason I'll talk about later. But in Roth's book, Roth was saying that the rule had always been in the band to not go and do other stuff. And Roth was sort of seeing Eddie do these other things. And Roth had some ideas that he knew Van Halen would be wrong for too. Like he wanted to do go do some stuff back to his roots. And obviously, as we know now, he ended up releasing an EP, Crazy from the Heat, with Just a Gigolo and California Girls and all that stuff that we all love as well. And I think just the fact that Ed had done a few things sort of without telling the guys, and then Roth had sort of made plans to do his EP and then a possible film, which didn't end up happening, called Crazy from the Heat as well. I think, obviously it was just getting to a point where it wasn't going to be sustainable for much longer. But one of the main reasons that I think that 1984 album sounds the way it does and has the particular kinds of songs on it that it does is because Ed was famously unhappy with Ted Templeman on the Diverdown record, which is the record immediately before 1984. And because there were so many covers on it, and it's famously known as the album with the most covers. And, some of the covers, of course, are fantastic, but Ed really just never wanted to do them. He never saw them as needing to do covers because they were songwriters. They've been writing since the beginning. And all their years from 75, or even probably a bit before that, where they were doing the clubs and the backyard parties around LA, that they were a cover band. So they were done with that. And anyway, Ted pushed a lot of his ideas through on Diverdown and apparently had said to Edward, he said, "Trust me, it's all about #1 singles. And this is how you make an album." And Ed hated that so much that he had decided that was really his reason for building a home studio, which the 1984 album would end up being recorded in. And I think it's worth mentioning, though, that some of the restrictions they had in building this studio that Ed did basically with the help and the advice of Don Landee, the mix engineer, was because it was illegal for them with the council zoning laws to build the size studio they wanted to on Ed's property. So they had to convince the council that they were actually going to build a racquetball court. And so the dimensions of the studio had to be the same as the dimensions of a racquetball court, which I think is funny. And Ed tells a story. This is just a quick little aside that I think is funny, is of course they laid all this crazy, like double thick concrete with extra layers and insulated this and that. And so one of the council representatives had come down to have a look to make sure that everything was on code. And he was like, "Man, this is pretty heavy duty for a racquetball court. Are you sure that's what you guys are building?" To which apparently Ed told them, he goes, "Oh yeah, we play racquetball really, really hard. So we need all this to not annoy the neighbors." And they were like, "All right." Anyway, it got the big tick and the 5150 recording studio was built. And it was like a little sort of haven for Ed and Don Landee to kind of really tinker and come up with all these different ideas and sounds. Now, a lot of the songs were kind of written before they started recording them at the studio, but Jump wasn't. Jump was one of the first songs that they recorded at 5150. And I think that, we talk about guitar sounds all the time, and we talk about how his guitar sound on 1984 was a lot drier than a lot of the previous albums.
Yep.
Well, I mean, one of the obvious reasons for that is they didn't have that Sunset Sound chamber reverb anymore, which they'd been using really since Van Halen 1. And the other thing that Don used to use at Sunset Sound all the time was the EMT plate reverb. And Ed's actually quoted as saying somewhere that he never really loved all that reverb on his guitars and stuff.
Correct.
Yeah. So they went for a more stripped back kind of minimalist thing. And one of the other things that I think is fascinating is because of the restrictions of the racquetball court size with the studio, they could only build the control room and then one main live room. And as Van Halen recorded live together, especially Ed and Alex, they didn't have enough room for Ed's gear, which he had, he had his quad box faced up against a wall and stuff. And Alex's full acoustic drum kit. So I've read that in fact, these are Ed's words, that one of how the whole Simmons pad electronic drum thing came about for this era of Van Halen was because they just couldn't fit all Alex's drum kit and the microphones in that room, plus all Ed's gear and the bass gear. So
I did not know that.
Yeah. So what they did was their solution was they would keep the snare drum and the kick drum acoustic, and then all the toms would be the electronic pads because they wouldn't need to put extra microphone stands and all of that stuff. And the other thing that's super fascinating is also to save space, but also to save mic channel lines. They didn't end up putting real cymbals and cymbal mics. So Alex Van Halen recorded all the cymbals after he recorded the kick and the snare and the Simmons pads, which I just think is unbelievable. Now, obviously, that would be the first time Alex would have even contemplated doing something like that. So I think like these decisions that are made because of the size of the 5150 studio are a huge reason why 1984 sounds the way it does. You know, we've got the electronic drums for the first time. We've got Ed's guitar sound drier than usual. And, you know, there's a couple of other sort of things too, which is really interesting. The mixing desk that Don Landee had found was basically a cheap Universal Audio. It was a $6,000 desk, to which apparently when Ed went to look at it with Don, Ed just went, nah, man, we can't use that. Not even for a demo home studio, we can't use that. And Don said, don't worry. I know this desk. I'll be able to rewire it. We'll get it singing, you know. So anyway, so that's and when you see those photos too, you don't even almost recognize it as a mixing desk. It looks like it's from the 40s, you know, like something the Beatles would have used. So anyway, so they put that $6,000 desk in there, and Don Landee rewired the whole thing apparently, and did all that. So there's a lot of sort of limiting factors. And the other thing is, I heard that they only had a 16-track tape machine, and that was which is one of the other decisions why to record Alex's cymbals afterwards, so they could record the bass, Ed's guitar, and the main bits of Alex's drums live, and then they would re-record other stuff on top of that. And I just think that's just unbelievable. You know, from a band that had all those huge records and recorded at Sunset Sound, to then basically trust your engineer enough to say, listen, we can do the sixth album in a home studio with a 16-track tape machine and a $6,000 desk, I just think is unbelievable. I think that's so ballsy, but I love it for that, you know?
Look, I agree. And I think it's precisely because Ed himself would pull guitars and amps apart. He was self-taught as far as understanding electronics and how that worked. And that kind of part, that part of his personality, he could see that with Don Landee, that he could do that too. You know, so from a mad scientist perspective of just getting in there, getting it done, making it work, was something obviously Eddie could identify with. I agree. I think that's fantastic, Hos. That background that you've given was phenomenal. I did not know though that they went to the Simmons drums, etc., because of space. That blew me away. Thank you for that, bro.
Yeah, no worries. Well, look, that's Ed's words, which I was surprised to hear as well. And the other thing that Ed said about his brother is that because the Simmons pads are so hard and there's no natural drum skin rebound, he said that over the years he played the Simmons pads, he really hurt his wrists. So I never knew that either, because Alex would hit the drums so hard that when he was playing the Simmons pads, he obviously couldn't change the way he played. So he hurt his wrists playing for those few years, you know, 1984, 5150 and that stuff.
He could have got carpal tunnel. Wow.
Yeah. Ed didn't talk about the exact condition, but he said that Al had hurt his wrists over those years. Yeah, with playing the Simmons pads. So that's really interesting, you know.
Pretty amazing, isn't it? Pretty amazing. Really, a testament to Alex to be able to just do that.
But can you imagine, like, I mean, I can't think of many musicians generally, but especially a drummer, that if you said to them, and we're talking about one of the greatest drummers in the world, right? No, I think no one would argue with that with Alex, right? Yeah. And then you're going to say to him, listen, we've got a small home studio now, so you can't use real drums. you got to use these rubber pads, and you can't actually play your cymbals at the same time. You're just going to have to overdub your cymbal crashes for a whole record later. I mean, most people will give you the bird and tell you where to go, but obviously Alex and Ed just had so much belief in each other as brothers that Alex was on board 100%. And that Ed's passion with Don was building the 5150 studio. Alex went along with it and said, okay, whatever you need me to do. If you want me to record my cymbals separate, that's what I'll do. I just think that's amazing. One of the other big changes in Ed's guitar sound, apart from losing the Sunset Sound reverbs, is he had just signed his Kramer endorsement deal. And so he just brand new had his 5150 Kramer guitar for the first time, which we all know and love now. But yeah, Andrew's pointing at, there you go. I can never do. I can never get that right. That's like with it's the same as with a USB plug. You got a 50% chance of getting it right the first time, and it's never right the first time, right? Anyway, but the other thing is Ed used a whole bunch of different guitars on this record that he didn't use on previous records. He used his Flying V. He used the stereo Steve Ripley guitar, and he used a Strat on one song as well. So the album's just got all these new elements. You've got this tension between the band members, but then you've also got tension between Don Landee and Ted Templeman, the producer, because Ted was really, like I was saying before, Ed was so frustrated that on the previous album, Diverdown, Ted just was all about doing covers and singles, that this was Ed's way of saying back to Ted, no, this is how you make a record, and so you had Ted coming to the studio to have a listen to the mixes, and Don Landee taking the tapes off the machine and hiding out the back with the tapes. So, and Eddie's telling Ted that, no, Don's gone. I don't know where he is. And then Ted would leave and Don would come back in and put the tapes back on, and they'd keep working, And I just think all that stuff just adds to this fire and alchemy of what we know is just such an amazing record, So
yeah. Awesome. I've got one question for you guys before we move on. I just want to do a quick shout out. We've got Hayden in the chat. Hey, Hayden, thanks for jumping on, buddy. Good to see you. So Brad, I know that you record from home. Hos, I know that you record from home. So how do you, and obviously you guys have the ability to take advantage of all the technology that we have now. So how important do you think it was for Ed to finally have a studio where he could just walk in, grab whatever guitar that he wanted, Hos, and record and then go back, as opposed to being in the studio where you've got three guitars, and in the back of his mind, Hos and Brad, he might be saying, cheapers, I should have brought the Strat. Yeah.
I personally, I think just having a little home studio, it's a very modest home studio, what I've got compared to probably what Hos has got, but it's the ability to just come in, switch on and get an idea down, even if it's not at the final stages and you just want to get the idea down, like the old days, like the Beatles, for example. I've been watching that 3-2-1 McCartney thing, and he talks about how in the old days they never had a way to actually record demos, and they had to always remember it. But at least this way with technology, you can come in, get it down, listen back to it later. But for Ed, it would have been almost mandatory for his brain and the capacity that he had of songwriting and riff ideas. And I mean, we've seen the amount of tapes that are on the walls in 5150 studio. So you can just imagine how suppressed he would feel if he didn't have a home studio. So I think that was a really important thing for Ed. Hos, what do you think?
Yeah, look, I really agree. I think it was Ed had been frustrated for years about not being able to record his ideas and demos in a way that really translated the way he heard them in his head, so he could play them to the boys and to Don and to Ted. I think he really craved that, because we all know him now as like such a tinkerer, perpetual tinkerer, and not just with music, but with equipment as well. And he struck me as the kind of guy that didn't really have an off switch, which meant that if he had an idea at 2 in the morning, he'd be up and wanting to work on that idea, in In fact, when we get to them, when we're ranking the songs in a minute, there's one of the songs he had to hum into a micro cassette recorder in a closet in a hotel room because Valerie was asleep, you know. And I think that was the kind of stuff that frustrated Ed and why he really wanted to do whatever it took to build the 5150 studio at his house, you know. And even though the size was too small because of the racquetball court dimensions, but he lived with that. And then all these other restrictions, you know, Alex obviously lived with having to record his drums in a different way. They had a desk that probably wasn't one of the greatest sounding desks, although of course it ended up sounding fantastic. But, you know, I mean, Ed said that was just all because of Don, because he was like a mad scientist, you know, he was a genius, you know? So yeah, I think it's important. Like what I'm flabbergasted by always is, I mean, even the little Pro Tools studio that I have in my house is far more technology than they had in the 5150 studio. And yet they recorded an incredible record with that had a #1 song. And in fact, the record was almost #1 as well. And for anyone that doesn't know, the record that was #1 instead of 1984 was Michael Jackson's Thriller. Yeah. And the guys in the band at first were sort of cool with the fact that Ed played the guitar solo on Beat It. But when they realized that the Thriller pipped them for #1 spot, they actually kind of thought that maybe had Beat It not been quite so big because of that guitar solo, maybe 1984 instead would have actually been #1. So it was kind of a weird double-edged sword, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, 100%. Is it true, Hos and Andrew, that he played the Beat It solo for nothing as well? Like he didn't really expect to get paid?
Yeah. Absolutely did it as a favor. Apparently he did it in 3 takes. And the other thing that's interesting about it is when he originally got the tapes from Quincy Jones, the form of the solo wasn't over those chords at all. It was actually just over the it was over the chorus, which is more like just a riff over one chord. And Ed didn't want to do that. He wanted to solo over the verse, which had some different chord changes. So Ed and Don actually cut the tapes and then re-delivered it back. And so Jeff Porcaro, who played drums on it, had to re-record his drums and his own click track because they'd cut up the tape so badly to make the guitar solo. So, yeah, it's funny, isn't it? But yeah, you're right. He ended up, because they had an agreement that he wouldn't play on other people's records, the way he could live with himself, I think, is that he said, listen, I'm just doing this for a crate of beer, you know, kind of thing. So, yeah.
Look, I agree with what John said, D351 saying there. Look, Thriller would have been #1 regardless. You know, it's a monster album. It's just fantastic. It's an album that everybody was listening to. Everybody, didn't matter what musical camp or music camp you were on, you were listening to the album. But Hos, before we get into the rankings, I just want to echo one little thing that you said about being a tinkerer and having a studio, because I know that Brad's done that when we've done shows. He's quickly run into his studio and jotted something down. We did Fleetwood Mac's Rumours a couple of weeks ago, and Christy McVie, when she wrote Songbird, it was about 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning. She stayed up all night because she couldn't read music. There was no one there to record it because she was scared that she was going to forget the chords and the melody to the song. So she had to stay up all night. So we got to remember that this wasn't long ago that, you know, that people, you know, now, Hos, you can whip out your iPhone and record yourself if you're somewhere, you know, you can hum something, Brad, you know, and you've got it down. But, you know, that it wasn't that long ago where there was nothing like that. So, hats off to these guys and girls for enduring.
But I have to say one thing, Andrew, even though that you can record these ideas on your iPhone, you know how many voice memos I've got of my guitar riffs that I haven't listened to since I've done them. So it's just,
that's the same with me, Brad. Same with me. I've got a voice full of, but you got to get them out. They say that the you know, if creativity is something that comes through you from the universe, if you don't get those ideas out, and even if it's as simple as singing them into your iPhone, the universe eventually just stops giving them to you because it learns that the channel is closed, you know. There's a lot of great quotes from songwriters and creative people about their muse, you know, and how to the things that are really bad for creativity and things that really foster it. But yeah, I mean, I like everyone used to carry around like a separate tape recorder when I was touring, but of course now you can do it all in your phone, which is great. Hey Nina, how you doing?
Hey Nina, good to see you. You're awesome. We think you're fantastic on that clip when you jumped in there. Wow.
Dreams.
Yep. The world has I haven't officially posted any of Nina's stuff as a proper promo yet, but of course we did sneak some out on the last show, and but Nina's promo is going to be coming soon for anyone that hasn't seen her and heard her sing. So yeah, that'd be great. But and actually Danny in the chat was asking me a question that he heard that Beat It was stitched together from a couple of different takes. I've read that somewhere too. And it wouldn't surprise me at all, because around that time, almost all of Ed's solos that were on like what I would call like a pop song. So whether that's Jump, whether that's Dreams, those kind of songs, they're all 2-bar phrases. And you can hear because they overlap slightly. If you listen to the end of a note, you hear another note coming in. So, and obviously he didn't do it because he couldn't play. He had nothing to prove at that point. I think they were just musical decisions. He played a bunch of solos on different tracks, and then he liked the first lick off this track, second lick off that track. And why not? That's a perfectly valid way to do it. Everyone does that in Pro Tools now anyway. So, so as far as the Beat It solo, Danny, I actually don't know, but it wouldn't surprise me if he even comped it out of 2 or all 3 of the takes. You know, who knows really? I'll have a closer listen and see if I can find it, but I don't know.
Yeah. Let's get into the rankings, guys.
Awesome.
Let's do it.
What a great introduction, brother. What a great, thank you. And
I think Hos has pretty much stepped it up a notch from everyone else. I think lift that name.
Stop it. It's look, all this information is so much more readily available now than even when it was before Eddie passed, because all these great authors are now deep diving and going into their into their past interviews and sort of tape transcripts and all of that stuff. And now all these things that weren't part of original publications, whether it was guitar magazines or something else, now we're getting all the nitty gritty and the detail and is awesome. So, you know, it's so much fun.
Look at Steve Rosenberg's book that's just been released. If you guys haven't seen it, so to buy his book from our part of the world, it's $29 but $60 freight. Yes. So I'm saving up some pennies, and if anybody wants to help contribute to the channel to get a copy of that, please let me know. We'll accept any donations.
Like freight is sometimes more expensive than the product you're trying to buy.
Yeah, you're getting stuff out of the States now is like getting gold from. Yeah,
that's always the way when you live in this part of the world. The freight is more expensive than the thing you're buying. With books, that's almost always the case, especially if it's a hardcover book. And it's like, for example, I bought a pick guard for my Strat the other day. Yeah, I think it was like $12 US and $50 US to post it.
Yeah.
So there you go. What are you going to do? You know, so it's $100 scratch plate.
Well, yeah. I hear, but look, between the 3 of us, I'll probably put an order in for the book because Steve's been very close to Eddie, and I'm sure he'll have some good nuggets in there. But Hos, you're right, the information that's coming through. But be careful, though. We have to be careful, and this is one of the reasons why we like doing this show. And Brad and I know this, especially from the Sunday show that we do. There are a lot of music hacks out there. There are a lot of people out there who write and pretend to be fans, pretend to be authors, and they perpetuate lies, myths, and basically bullshit. So be very careful about what's going to happen and what comes out, because people are going to attach anything to get clickbaits or sell anything, especially with Eddie in the future. I'm sure of it.
Yeah. Look, you're right. But luckily there is a handful of really trusted sources, and You know, obviously, Andrew, you had Brad Talinsky and Chris Gill on the show, having an awesome chat with them. If anyone hasn't actually seen that show, go back and watch the replay of that, because those two guys are so awesome, and their book Eruption is killer. So, in fact, there's a whole chapter on the 1984 period where a lot of those things I didn't know before are in that book. So if anyone hasn't read that, that's definitely worth checking out. But why don't we get onto the rankings?
Yes,
and
brother.
Okay, well, obviously, let's start at the top. I'm going to start simple, and we're talking about the synth intro called 1984. It might seem odd that I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10. The reason for that is because I feel like it fully served its purpose, which would have been at the time a way of breaking anybody's expectation of what the new Van Halen record was going to sound like. I couldn't even imagine at the time putting it on and hearing that almost like sci-fi Hollywood movie soundtrack kind of ethereal, spacey kind of synth sound. I think that it would have, any preconceived ideas I would have had about the record, that would have broken them straight away. And even to this day, even though now we know all this background, I think it's a really cool way to start the record, because it sets up that the song that you're about to hear is going to be synthesizer based. You know, I think that it was a really smart move. Look, obviously it doesn't go on for too long. It's just a simple little intro, but I think in terms of what its purpose is, it serves it 10 out of 10 for me.
Yep.
Look, for me, I have to agree, Hos. It's the synth intro to this album sets the mood for the whole record. You know, it sets it apart from previous records that they did. It segues perfectly into the next song. It's hard to rank it properly as a standalone song for me, because I've always seen 1984 and Jump as kind of like a bit of, they're like one. It's like a theatrical thing. They do the little intro, then the song hits.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of like that for me. I find it hard to rank as a standalone song. However, I gave it 9 out of 10 because it sets the mood for the whole record, and it's a bold step forward from Ed. Yeah. So 9 out of 10 for me. Never a skip.
Awesome, brother. Look, I'm going to pinch a phrase off the rock professor that he introduced last week. I think that little snippet that we've just been talking about is a manifesto. It's a manifesto of where this album is going to go. But more than that, it's a manifesto of where Eddie Van Halen as a musician is going. Now, we've got obviously history and time on our side to work that out. And some people might say, well, you know, that's easy for you to say in 2022. But just remember this, guys. Old farts like me will remember that listening to this kind of keyboard music wasn't uncommon. You had Jan Hammer around the same time. You know, you had the Hollywood detective with the keyboard intro. It was happening everywhere, you know, this kind of stuff. Miami Vice with the same kind of music. So it wasn't uncommon to the popular ear at the time. And I think, you know, this is no disrespect to where Eddie wanted some of his music to go, Hos and Brad. You know, pop music back then wasn't a bad thing, but he just wanted to, I think, just branch out a little bit as far as his music goes. And this snip gives it to us. And I have to agree with Hos. It's a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, well said, Andrew. I mean, don't forget, you're talking about like synth stuff in movies. Yeah, you had was it Harold Faltermeyer's theme in Beverly Hills Cop, which was what
Beverly Hills Cop.
Yeah, so you're bang on. I mean, this wasn't, what Ed did wasn't groundbreaking. It was just different for Van Halen. And I think it was very smart of him to sort of capture the zeitgeist of the time, you know, because you also had bands like Mr. and stuff that were very synthesizer based. You know, we had a lot of kind of dance pop and new wave stuff starting to happen. And I think that, you know, Ed was always a realist when it came to, and very clever the way they always held their identity, Van Halen. They always held a pure vision, but yet it just had one foot enough in what was happening at the time, you know. And I think that starting the album that way was really clever because, like we all three of us have said, it broke everyone's preconceptions from the very first time the needle dropped. And I think that that makes it special. So, yeah. Well, leading then into Jump. Jump was the first song, Ed was saying, that they actually recorded at the new 5150 studio. And famously, he ended up tinkering with it for quite a while. They apparently worked on the arrangement, like that whole keyboard solo part and the key change for the guitar solo. All that stuff apparently took a long time to really take shape. But we have to be very, 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 very grateful for Jump, because it's really the one thing that apparently, according to Ed, sold Ted Templeman on letting the band do what they wanted for the whole rest of the record, because Ted was so convinced it would be a #1 smash, which it was, that he kind of backed off and let Ed and Don Landee work late into the night, like we were talking on all that beautiful other stuff. So, you know, even for that reason, Jump is awesome. But as a song, I have to say, a lot of people have asked me over the last, well, really since Eddie passed, how do I feel about the keyboard stuff? And in fact, I can't remember who asked me, but someone in the comments asked the same thing. For me, I was lucky because when I was 11, I got a mixtape from my guitar teacher with all stuff from the first 7 Van Halen records. So my first impression of Van Halen already had keyboards in it. It's just so happened that it also had stuff from Van Halen 1, 2, Women and Children, all the records. Yep. So I wasn't old enough to all of a sudden try and get my head around what Van Halen as a synthesizer band is going to be like. So that's kind of a moot point for me. But the beautiful thing about it is I just loved it straight away. There was, as Jump for me as a song, there is not one thing wrong with it's fun. David Lee Roth gets to be David Lee Roth on top of it. You know, he's got all his squeals and pops and you know, he's famously acrobatic. So having a song called Jump makes perfect sense, even lyrically. And yeah, I mean, I've got to give it 10 out of 10. In fact, one of the funniest things that the band all laughed about at the time is Eddie Van Halen won Best Keyboard Solo in Keyboard Player magazine, which all the other actual, like, full virtuoso keyboard players couldn't stand. But actually, I think it's very it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. It would be like if Eddie jumped on the drums for one song and got Best Drum Solo in Drummer magazine, you know? So, yeah.
Oh, my Lord.
But yeah, 10 out of 10 for me.
Oh, that's a great explanation there, Hos, of everything you went through there. It's hard to follow you now at the moment. I'm finding it very difficult, but I'm going to mirror a lot of what you said. It's, you know, it's such a fun party song, and I always see the film clip in my head to this song. It's always fun to listen to. It's always fun to play on guitar. I love the feel that Alex has set on the drums. That keyboard solo, you know, it's like an epic piece of music that's been put together. I'm glad you highlighted that it actually was, they spent a lot of time on the arrangement of this song, but you can tell, I think you can really tell they honed this song to be perfect. They didn't want it any other way. The guitar solo from Ed, you know, I've heard it spliced together from different takes. I think you can hear it in isolated tracks, but whatever they've done, it fits perfectly to the song. David Lee Roth, his vocals, lyrics, his quirkiness, his pops, his squeals, his everything. Yeah. It's perfect for the song. It's a perfect radio song, especially for the era. It's a great song. You could play this song to anyone that doesn't know Van Halen as a perfect example of Van Halen. And for me, it's a 10 out of 10. It's never a skip either.
Yep.
Look, I agree with you guys. There's a couple of things I'd like to say, tag on to what my co-hosts have said. This album is my favorite David Lee Roth era album. David Lee Roth's vocals on all the songs on this album are just fantastic. It's there are a couple of irritated irritations on other albums that he's done, but his vocal work on this album's fantastic. And as I said in the introduction, guys, when I hear this song, I have this visual imprint of the video carved into my mind, into my consciousness, and that big smile that Eddie has when he's doing the solo, the guitar solo. I just can't get rid of that image. Crafty song, Hos, as you said. It's a great song. It's a pop song. It's got all the elements in 1983, 84, that people want and expected. It was their only number one too, as I understand. Well deserved. I have to give it, guys, a 10 out of 10. And everybody that I knew who even wasn't a Van Halen fan or a rock and roll fan was listening to this album. This song got people dancing and having fun and spilling beer on each other. Love it.
Yeah, I agree. And despite that, the band's initial objections, and especially apparently Roth's initial objections to a song so heavily keyboard based, it would have brought a whole new audience to Van Halen.
Correct.
Yeah, the general public, the mums and dads and the kids that didn't even know Van Halen won in 1978. It would have brought all of that, and that's obviously why it went number one, because that many people bought the single. Back in the day when people bought singles and number one was a real number one, and actually John Conklin was asking in the chat there, saying in the chat that it's a top 5 solo for him. I think when you give Edward Van Halen only 8 bars to do a solo in a song that's barely got any guitar on it, man, you can play Tchaikovsky piano concertos if you want, if you play an 8-bar guitar solo like that in the middle, because that solo is ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. And yes, you can hear it's punched from different ideas. Who cares? Because the composition of it is still his,
Exactly.
But I never really understand when guitarists or anyone gets upset about guitar solos that are made from different takes, because that would be like Beethoven writing something and then deciding, maybe I'll put those other 8 bars here, and then someone going, no, you're not allowed to change anything. It's a composition. It's crazy, So, yeah, you
can do what you want with it because you are the author of it. Again, go your own way. I hate to go on about this. This is an album we did a couple of weeks ago. Two takes, two different takes on that solo. Why not? It's great. Do it if it's 3 takes.
Yeah. I've never really understood why some people have a problem with drop-ins on solos. I think as long as the solo sounds great on the record, surely that's the goal. And as you said, Andrew, it's composed by the same person, so it's come from their heart. So
for all the haters, there's a solo coming up that's all one take, so that'll keep them happy.
That's right. And look, this album, it's got so much variety that it's got something for everybody. You're exactly right. So why don't we move on then to the next song, which is Panama. So Ed apparently was asked by the other guys in the band on the back of the success of the first couple of AC/DC records with Brian Johnson, could he come up with an AC/DC style riff? And in his own way, what he came up with was Panama. And look, Panama obviously is a fun party song. It feels almost more casual than Jump to me, like Jump has structure, and even though it's fun, Panama is almost like a jam. You can feel the sense of humor in it. And for me, I love it. But maybe because it just feels a bit more loose and jammy, and because it does have its kind of provenance in an AC/DC influence, that's why for me, I can only give it a 9 out of 10. But I do love it, obviously, like we all do. But so 9 out of 10 for me for Panama.
Wow. All right. Well, I can see why you give it a 9, but for me, I love this song. I love the energy. I love the feel. The intro to me is just iconic. The stabbing guitar and drum thing, the big choruses, you have to sing along. The solo's tasty, cheeky. You know, it's got all the Ed flavor in it. I love the drumming. Ed's in fine form on this one. The solo, you know, he pulls it back dynamically. He's totally in control. David Lee Roth sings great. He's ad-libbing in the middle there. Clever lyrics. It's another great party song. You know, and this is the beautiful thing about Van Halen. They're about fun and partying at this point in their lives. And, you know, they may have been having a little bit of turmoil in the band, but the thing what they wanted to do is put fun stuff out. You never saw Ed on stage with a frown or looking unhappy. He was always smiling. And when I think of Panama, I think of the film clip again. You know, no keyboards in this song, straight up rock and roll. 10 out of 10 for me. It's never a skip.
Brad, I was going to give this a 10 out of 10. And I think, you know, for a big chunk of my life, it was always a 10 out of 10 song. Hate to harp on about the video, but I did warn you guys that some of these songs we were going to relate back to the videos because there's this organic connection there. So it was the first time we'd seen here in this part of the world a guitar that looked different from Frankie, this 5150. So you know, we're geeking out and we're talking about, you know, different patterns here and what's happening in the chat. So we were trying, you know, we had VHSs. Do you remember those things? Hos mentioned that, you know, VHSs, you know, where you could freeze these things and try and get this like whirly sort of focused thing, but it would never get focused. But trying to work out what this guitar was because it was different. Loved it. Great song, Brad. You've hit the nail on the head. It's a party song. Everyone knows it. Everyone knew this song. Radio song at the time. But I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10 only because I've gone through and looked at some of these other songs. So I'm happy with my 9.
Andrew, it's great to go back and reassess these songs as well. I know we've ranked these once before, but it's great to do it this way. I've picked up a few other things. I've ranked them a little bit differently. And I also, none of us really mentioned the engine noise. And that's obviously from Eddie's Lamborghini, isn't it?
Yes, correct, brother. That's correct.
We have a look at that. So,
what a car. The 1960s Lamborghini Miura. Gorgeous thing. So I think they all thought he was nuts when he wanted to back his car up next to the 5150 studio and record it. But that's what it is. So in the clip, it's a hairdryer, right?
I can't remember now.
Yes.
Roth's got a hairdryer.
Yes.
But I don't know about you guys, but if I owned a Lamborghini Miura and it was revving its naturally aspirated V12 and recorded that, and then in the clip, Roth said, "Hey, listen, for that sound, let me get out a hairdryer," I would not be happy. I would not be happy. And actually, I saw that, Andrew, you just put up on the screen before Danny was asking a super nerd question about the lick in jump. Danny, you are absolutely correct. That's what it is. So, yeah.
Thank you, brother.
And John, yes, sorry. Go on, Brad. No, go.
I'm actually a bit shocked that you didn't even mention the Lamborghini Hos, because I thought you, of all people, would be the person that would.
I've got it here in my notes, of course. In fact, the Lamborghini I can mention it in another song to debunk a myth. So I'll leave it for that instead, you know.
Okay.
But look, don't get me wrong. I give Panama a 9 out of 10 in its energy and in its fun and in its just absolute, as John Conklin was saying, that kick drum 4 to the floor party song. There's nothing wrong with it at all. It's only that when I put it against one or two other songs that for me, I just enjoy a fraction more, I've got to leave them as a 10, you know, but
yeah,
that's
exactly what I'm doing, brother. That's exactly what I'm doing.
All right. Well done, gents. Now, the next song, Top Jimmy, is actually got some very different things about it. And this was the song that Ed was, he was in a hotel room with Valerie at the time. And he had this inspiration. He heard this melody in his head. And so he took his micro cassette recorder into the closet and was humming the melody. Hang on. I think I'm mixing my songs up, so you'll have to excuse me. No, it's a different song. So forget that. I'll repeat that for another song. But Top Jimmy, he wrote Steve Ripley, who built a stereo guitar so that different strings could be panned to different speakers. Gave one to Ed, and Ed loved it. but he wanted a simpler version with less knobs, and because apparently it had like 1,000 knobs on it, the original one. So Steve gave him a more simpler version, and he ended up hearing the melody in his head for this. And so he didn't write it initially on the guitar. He heard the melody and then tuned the guitar to an alternate tuning so that he could play what he heard in his head on the guitar, which he couldn't do in standard tuning. And I think that's awesome. And that's also the mark of really like an inspired musician, you know, because they're not bound by bar chords and things they already know. And that's classic Ed, thinking outside the box. So for all the guitar geeks, the tuning for this is essentially like a open D7 chord, but just with no third in it. So, okay, so the low strings are D, A, D, so like a drop D. And then the high strings are A, C, and D again. So, and that's all of top, except for the guitar solo is played on the 5150 Kramer.
Correct.
But yeah. And so the easy way that you can figure out if you've got the tuning right is the intro with those harmonics, the doom, da, 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 da. That's just the 12th fret with all the open strings. Doom, da, 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 da. So that melody is the open strings.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
So that's the tuning. And then lyrically, the song was actually written about a guy that David Lee Roth knew that used to bartend at this little club called the 00 Bar, I believe it is. And he had his own band too called Top Jimmy and the Rhythm Pigs. And apparently, you know, they used to this dive bar had this incredibly low ceiling and they used to just blow the roof off this joint, you know. So when David Lee Roth was going out with the girls, he would take them to this place. They'd turn up in a limo and the girls would be horrified because it would be like this tiny little sweat box of a bar and they were all dolled up thinking they were going to some incredible club like, you know, Studio 54 or something. So anyway, so that's what lyrically the song is about, this actual guy in LA. And Ed wrote the song that way. So that's why this song has a really different sound, because it's played on a guitar that Ed never used before. And you can't really hear the stereo thing very clearly unless you put the headphones on. But when you do, and if someone hasn't done that yet, please listen to Top Jimmy with headphones, because you'll hear all the different notes come out of different sides of your head. It's actually quite the trip. So, look, when I was young, I didn't really love Top Jimmy, but I think that's probably because just musically it was more complex than my young brain wanted to hear. I wanted to hear Panama and Jump, you know. But I have to say, as I've got older, I've come to love Top Jimmy. I think it's such an awesome song. It's quirky, it's fun. And back in the late 90s when Jerry and I would jam Van Halen songs, we picked this one. And man, it is so much fun to play on guitar. You retune the guitar and play these weird chord shapes. And it's awesome. So I'm going to give Top Jimmy an 8.
Look, that's some really good information there, Hos. I didn't know some of that, so thanks for sharing. That's you know, one of the additions you brought to this show, mate, is this information and the stuff you know. That's just I'm going to go try tuning my guitar to that now and try it all out and try and learn it.
Oh,
That's
Brad,
great.
you'll have a blast, brother. I promise. Once you get the tuning, it's so much fun to play.
Yeah, I mean, I write in different tunings, so it's playing in different tunings isn't you know, out of the ordinary for me. But I have not tried that tuning, so I'll definitely try it. But look, for Top Jimmy, for me, it's always been a heavyweight song on the album for me. Great feel, chorus is catchy. You know, the highlights the solo section for me. It could almost be another song idea. You know, the arrangement, the way it goes. Great harmonies. David Lee Roth sings great on it. I actually love the lyrics. I know what the song was about, but I love the way it's written. It's just fantastic. I gave it, you know, we always rank these songs, guys, in the chat in relation to the other songs on the album. So I had to give this one an 8.5 out of 10 in comparison to the rest of the songs on the album. But I do love the song. And I've always really liked this song. For some reason, you know, very young guy, big Zeppelin fan. I always thought Top Jimmy, because I never knew anything about what it was written about. Well, I thought that a lot of the guitar playing was very Jimmy Pagey, and I actually thought the song was written about Jimmy Page, or like in a character sort of thing. Like, I had no idea So it's interesting now that I've learned that it's in an open tuning, because Page used to do a lot of open tunings too. So maybe that's why the Jimmy Page thing was always something in my head for this song. But definitely 8.5 out of 10 for me, and never a skip. Andrew.
Yeah, look, Hos is he's articulated something that I went through to myself for a long time. You know, early on, I kind of didn't gravitate to this song, but as I developed and started listening to other music forms, I went back to the song Hos, and I appreciated it for what it was, because it was something that was telling, I think, a believable story about this guy called Top Jimmy who could make the people go crazy, you know. So it was a believable song from that point of view. As I was starting to sort of get deeper and deeper into the blues, I could see some kind of parallel here with what they were trying to do. Loved the intro. The intro was completely amazing. Completely different from everything else. But I have to agree with you guys. I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10. Never a skip. Great song. John Conklin's mentioning some interesting things there too about the rhythm that's happening. But I have to, again, back up with what Hos said. If there is one song that you've got to listen to with your headphones on this album, if you guys haven't, you've got to go and listen to them with your cans on. Go and put your cans on and listen to this song. It's fantastic.
Yeah, agreed. This is a headphone song for sure. And look, I haven't said this yet, but for me so far, even the ones that aren't quite a 10, they're all never a skip. Absolutely for me. And Mikey Mojo is asking, does Ed finger pick the intro? No, I'm pretty sure it's picked. The reason that it might sound finger picked, or someone else in the chat was saying perhaps like finger tapped, is because of the way that it's open tuned. Your brain as a guitarist knows that you couldn't get those harmonics any other way, which is why you'd think that he taps the melody. But actually, because of the open tuning, he's basically just barring his finger across the 12th fret, then going to the 7th, like that. So he's basically, essentially, like even that that comes in, that's all just one finger. You got to think of it like playing a slide, you know? And it's so the sound of the song is all 7th chords because he's tuned the guitar to like basically a D7, you know?
You know, that's kind of opened up my mind so much to this song now, because I always listen to it and go, oh, man, I'm not sure I can play those little country sort of licks there. And
you can do it now.
Yeah, I know. Now I can have a crack at it.
Well, Brad, when we catch up, brother, let's go through that, because that'll be fun for me to bone up on that as well, you know?
100%.
Cool. So the last song on side A of the vinyl, Drop Dead Legs. I love this song. I know a lot of people love this song, and I'm no different. I just think that this song is an incredible testament to, you've got this insane musicality in the band that's been well demonstrated on all the earlier records in terms of its, especially Ed and Al's virtuosity, you know, stuff like all their hyper boogies, you know, and all their crazy shuffles and all that stuff. That Ed and Al, and of course, you know, Mike, sounds so good doing a very slow backbeat kind of, you know. I just think that takes confidence in who you are as a musician to play grooves almost, you know. I mean, apparently this one was actually Ed's sort of version of Back in Black, the song Back in Black, you know. And when you think about dum da da dum da da dum Back in Black, and then you think of Drop Dead Legs, dum da 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 dun. So all he's done is he's really made the chords take up twice as long as Back in Black, but they're almost the same chords as well. So, but of course, Ed said in an interview when someone asked him about it, he said, yeah, that's how I started it, but it's me. So it's never really going to ever sound like AC/DC, really. It's just that that's where the idea sort of comes from, you know, because I believe that they toured with them around 82 or something, which would have been as the songs for this album were probably popping into Ed's head. So so that would make a lot of sense if they were touring with them, that they would be wanting to capture some of that vibe. And obviously, as we all know, Back in Black is just super famous. song of all time in rock and roll. So there's nothing wrong with taking the germ, you know, the seed of that and making something out of it. But yeah, I just think listening to Al and Ed, their pocket on Drop Dead Legs is so much fun. I love the dynamics. And I think that the solo on this one is for the first time where you can really hear how much now that Ed was listening to Alan Holdsworth, you know, especially that outro solo section that sort of goes long. He's playing deliberately outside of key. And even in Ed's own words, he said, I mean, this was around the time that Ed convinced Ted Templeman to sign Alan Holdsworth and was going to produce his record. Though I think, unfortunately, Alan didn't want to wait the extra 2 or 3 weeks till Ed got off the road for him to produce it for him. And I feel like from reading the stuff that Ed said about it, I think he was a little bit hurt by that because he really wanted to produce Alan's record, you know. But nevertheless, you can hear Alan's influence on that outro solo to Drop Dead Legs. I love it. It's also a super fun song to play because of how much space there is in it, the way it lays back. Look, that's the other thing that's actually really cool that I'll just quickly say is it's vocally, it has the two elements that I've always loved about Van Halen. So you've got Roth doing his classic, almost old school jazz crooner sort of, you know, Sinatra, Louis Armstrong kind of thing in the verse. But then you have those super sweet pop, you know, honey backing vocals of Michael Anthony and Ed, you know, the when the night is through, will I still, all that stuff. You got that. And that's why Van Halen, it was such a mosaic of incredible things. You had the sweetness of the backing vocals. You had this almost Louis Armstrong crooning of Roth. And then you had like Al and Ed just absolutely laying it down. And so look, a great song, 8 for me.
Cool. Well, yeah, look, the Back in Black thing I can definitely hear, but I mean, I'm firstly, I love this track. It's, you know, for me, the very first time I heard this track, I thought it was like reminiscence of like Led Zeppelin to me, especially Alex's drumming. I love the intro. I love the way the drums come in. You know, again, like I just said before, Alex is sensational in this. I like the harmonies of the singing. They're one of the highlights for me. The guitar runs are great. The solo is great. The rhythm guitar at the outro, it's got like an octave pedal or something on it, Hos.
Yeah, it does. It does. Yeah.
Even just that rhythm guitar playing, I love that alone, let alone what he's playing over the top of it. And
I couldn't agree more. I could just listen to that rhythm riff.
Yeah, and that with that octave pedal, it just sounds like a Boss octave pedal or something. I don't know what it is, but it just sounds sensational. The bass playing is great on this song. I love David Lee Roth's vocals and the lyrics on the song. Look, I gave it a 10 out of 10. I love it. And it's one of my most listened to songs on this record.
Right.
Andrew.
Guys, I love this song. I think it's fantastic. You guys have nailed it all, though. One of the burdens of going third. But we all take turns, so that's good. Look, the vocal on this is just, I love it. I can listen to this album. I'm sorry to repeat myself. And just be amazed by David Lee Roth's ability to sing and get the song sung so well. This Alan Holdsworth inspired lick towards the end is just fantastic. It's interesting that you guys mentioned Alan Holdsworth because around the time this name Alan Holdsworth was, you know, popping up in guitar interviews, and it was like, who is this Alan Holdsworth? I have to agree with what Keith Campbell said, though. His biggest mistake was not waiting for Ed. Gotta agree with Keith there. But it wasn't. But it wasn't until later on when I started hearing what Alan was doing. So, you know, but look, Brad, I love this song. I think I ranked it lowly one other time when we were talking about this album. But I'm going to give this song a 10 out of 10. I just think that it just encapsulates everything. You guys have said it, nice. I love the chorus. The chorus harmonies are fantastic. Just quintessential Van Halen chorus scene. I love it. Never a skip.
Yeah, never a skip for me too. And of course, for anyone that doesn't know, Ed played his 1958 Flying V on this song. So he didn't play the Kramer 5150 on Drop Dead Legs. And you can hear, especially in the first solo, that Ed has this way of playing when he's playing a stop tail bridge guitar. And I love it. I love it as much as when Ed's using the whammy bar. I think that it's really special. And I was just reading, I'd forgotten in my notes that in Eddie's own words, he said it's a jazz version of Back in Black, which I think is hilarious because it doesn't really sound like jazz to me. And it doesn't really sound like Back in Black either, but that Eddie thinks that is sort of funny to me. But so this was the first time on the record we heard the Flying V.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Thank you for mentioning that, guys. But I don't hear it either. But musicians love teasing other musicians when they describe songs, don't they?
Yeah. That's right. Because I don't think anyone in the chat would think that it's jazz Back in Black. But that's to not think that Eddie thought that is really funny. But well, so fellas, that covers side A of the record. So. I mean, I don't know what I would have thought if I was old enough, to be a teenager and go and buy this vinyl and hear it fresh without hearing it sort of mixed into all the other stuff I did when I was a kid. But all I know is if that had have happened and I had have taken the needle off and turned the record over and put the needle back down and heard that drum intro to Hot for Teacher, I think I would have just about fell off the couch, And Brad, you were talking a little bit earlier about Eddie's Lamborghini Miura. There has been written in some articles, and Andrew, you're right, there's a lot of bogus kind of stuff out there if you're not reading the right authors, but there has been some talk over the years that the very start of Hot for Teacher was actually Eddie's Lamborghini idling, and then Alex comes in with the toms on top of it. But, of course, as we all now know, that is complete rubbish. From the very beginning, it's just Alex on the Simmons pads. And then he comes in with the kick drums and the toms and everything else after that. And really, I think it's the first time that you really get a sense of what crazy stuff Al could do with the Simmons drums. Because even though there was drum fills where you would hear them on the earlier songs, this is the first time you hear Al almost, you can tell he's written it around the sound of the attack of those drums.
Yep.
And it's just absolutely special. So this is Rolling Stone magazine wrote this as ZZ Top on Speed, which I think is funny. And I think that's kind of true, actually, because if you think about it, it's like LaGrange, but just you put the turntable on the wrong speed. It's too fast. I love this. For me, someone in the chat before was saying if you were going to play a Van Halen song to someone that had never heard Van Halen, you could play Panama, and that would give them the perfect idea. I actually think if I was going to play Van Halen to someone that had never heard them, I'd play Hot for Teacher, because I think it demonstrates the fun, the irreverence, obviously some of the sexual innuendo because it's rock and roll, but also the incredible musical prowess of these guys. And of course, the jazz influence, the big band influence from their upbringing through their father. I just think that this has got a bit of everything. Again, Ed used his Flying V on this one. So that sound in the verse is the neck pickup of the Flying V. What else can I say about this? I love this. And I love this so much. And you guys know I never do this. I'm giving this an 11 out of 10.
Wow.
That's hard to follow, Hos. I mean, this song in particular, Hot for Teacher, first time I ever heard it, I thought the drums were actually a Harley Davidson. That was what I thought. I heard that, like I could hear the Harley Davidson there.
It is similar to a Harley Davidson. You're right.
Yeah, but then obviously looking into it, obviously had to listen to it 2 or 3 times to actually absorb what was happening in the song for me. And I do that a lot. Like if I hear a song that it just blows me away for the first time. I listen to it again and again and just to absorb it all. But you know, the drum intro, it's insane. The guitar intro, it's explosive. The way he sort of just comes in, it's just
like,
you know,
yeah. Can I interrupt you for a second? Imagine hearing that drum intro and thinking, well, what's Eddie going to do on top of that? And then he comes in as equally psycho as his brother.
Yeah, and it's like there's just one thing. The drums are just like explosive. Then the guitar comes in over the top, layering an explosive guitar line. And for me, I mean, you think about Ed's rhythm playing, and we always talk about his solos and that, but as a rhythm player, this really highlights his rhythm playing and his dynamics and the way he used to roll the volume back on the guitar and clean it up and bring it all back in. For this song, I hear a massive ZZ Top influence, without a doubt. Billy Gibbons. I know I'm not going to touch too much on the Clapton thing because that's my co-host Andrew's department there, because he's Mr. Clapton. He's the Clapton is God man, and I'll leave it to him for that. But you know, basically this song is a play on schoolboy crushes on teachers, and it's funny. The chorus is clever. You know, like I said, the solo has that Clapton spin. It definitely sounds like Ed to me. The outro, just the way they end it, is just sensational. As that big cock rock ending. Look, I can't give it anything higher than a 100 out of 10. It's sensational song, and I have to agree. That's one song you could give to an alien to listen to for the first time of Van Halen and go, this is what they're all about. It's got the energy, it's got the power, it's got the quirkiness, it's got the dynamics, it's got everything in there. Andrew.
Oh, look, I have to agree with you guys. So back in our vinyl sniffing days, as Hos said, you know, you've got up, you've picked up side one, you've been knocked over by side one, you flip it over, you drop side two down, or else, you know, if you're cruising along in your Holden station wagon, you've got a cassette player, you flick the cassette out and you turn it over to side two, you get blown away, guys, completely by this song. It was just something that just propelled everybody that I knew into some kind of different world. You've hit the nail on the head. You know, there's some ZZ Top stuff there. There's some Clapton riffs going on there. Obviously, you know, Eddie can't help himself. He's got to go back and dig deep from where he comes from, you know, from these other guys, which makes it great. You know, it makes it fantastic. Then the video gets dropped, and then we just sit and we scrutinize that video for hours, didn't we, guys? You know, it was just mandatory just sitting there watching this video. Look, you guys have said it all. It's mandatory. I love the song. It's going to be one that's going to be played at my funeral. I have to Brad score this. It's probably one of my favorite songs on the album. It's a Brad score. It's 100 out of 10. Good to see that my co-hosts and I are on the same page, and I think everybody else in the chat is agreeing with that same sentiment, guys. It's a killer song.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of love hearts and 10 out of 10s in the chat. So I think it's a unanimous decision here with Hot for Teacher. And you brought up a good point, Andrew, in that, you know, the song, just the audio of the song is incredible enough. And then the film clip on top of that is everything a Van Halen film clip should be to me. You know, it's got the humor, it's got them as little kids in school, and it's got hot rods, and it's got teachers and you know, in various states of undress. It's just hilarious, you know. It's what a way to start side B of an album. I mean, honestly, you could almost lift the needle after that one song on side two and go, okay, I'm done. That was worth it right there. You know, can I just go on?
Yeah, it's the perfect song to start side two.
Yeah. And look, the other thing I've got to say about the album as a whole, which I really love, and I miss this because no one really does this anymore, apart from the little 1984 intro, it's an 8-song album.
Yeah.
And yet
33 minutes, Hos.
Wow, really? Is that all it is? So, I mean, this is how good this record is even though it's only 33 minutes and 8 songs, it's one of the greatest rock albums of all time and almost was number 1. So that's, it just goes to show. But now everybody's album has 14 songs on it. I don't want to listen to 14 songs, Give me 8 killers. So,
Well, look, that just before you jump in, Hos, the solo in that, and I think we've discussed this once before, Andrew, and something that you might have overlooked, the solo. There's just so many Eric Clapton licks in that solo, and if you really go back and have a listen to it, especially if you have a listen to the isolated guitar solo track of it, you could almost be forgiven if you thought it was Eric Clapton playing parts of it.
Go and listen to Derek and the Dominoes, some of the early stuff that Clapton was doing in that 69, 70 era, and listen to what he's doing here. It's spookingly similar. But, that was his guru, wasn't it? Clapton was his guru.
Yeah. And on a bit of a funny note, my girlfriend works in the education department. I won't say what she does or whereabouts, but I always say to her, I'm off a teacher. So, I sing that to her occasionally for a bit of a she laughs at me. Okay, I'm off a teacher. Anyway, leave that where it is. Get it back out of the gutter, mate. Let's go.
All right, next song, I'll Wait. There's a lot that's been said about this song, so I'll touch on some of it, and you guys can fill in the gaps if I've missed anything. But this was actually a song that Ted Templeman famously hated. He did not want it to go on the album, and in fact, they struggled with this one. And David Lee Roth was even having trouble coming up with a melody and lyrics for the chorus. So Ted grabbed Roth one day and went off, because Ted was, of course, also producing the Doobie Brothers with Michael McDonald. And so they went off to see Michael to just see what he thought of it and if he had any ideas. And so the way I've read it is that essentially they played Michael on a cassette recorder, like their sort of demo of it from the 5150 studio, but without any vocals. And the chorus melody and some of the words he basically just came up with on the spot.
Correct.
And in Ed's words, he didn't know anything about this. And so he came into the 5150 studio one day, and in the control room was Ted with Roth playing this thing to Don and to see if he could pull it up and get Roth to sing a similar thing on it. And Ed had sort of interrupted them and said, what are you guys doing? What's this? And they all turned around and said, oh, nothing. And so in Ed's words, although I find it hard to believe that he wouldn't have learned it before Michael McDonald sued them, but he didn't even know that Michael McDonald came up with the melody until he sued them for it when the album came out, because he was unpaid and uncredited. And I just think that, you can talk about all the different things that were happening with the band members and Don sneaking out the back with the tapes and Ted Templeman wanting the mixes earlier than they were ready. But I just think that really goes to show how much distrust there was at the time. That, I mean, I don't know how you'd ever, if you were Ted Templeman, the producer, how would you figure that Ed's not going to find out that Michael McDonald was involved? That's amazing to me that you would think you could pull that over the wool of Ed's eyes, pull the wool over his eyes.
Well, the factions had been formed, weren't they? The factions were being formed, and that was part of it, I think. I've got to be careful what I say here, because we're about being positive, aren't we? But clearly there was a division there, and I think Ted thought that Ed was just probably not even going to think about it, maybe, and that's why.
Yeah, look, I agree with you, and it's very well reported too. And I agree. Obviously, we want to keep things to the positive, but Ed and Don were known to be staying up late pretty much all the time, drinking and doing other stuff. And they probably just thought that in their state, it never even occurred to them,
Correct.
Unfortunately, though, it did occur to Michael McDonald when he heard the record. So, and the fact that the record, had it not sold very well, maybe Michael McDonald wouldn't have even cared. But the fact that it was number 2, I guess that's you're going to be seeing some dollars wanting to come in for that, I would think. But,
I agree with Keith too. I was shocked when I first heard that McDonald was involved in it too. Yeah, they kept. Yeah, I was shocked, brother.
But you know what's funny is me too. But after I learned that, because I listened to a lot of Doobie Brothers when I was young, and I love Michael McDonald. So when you know it, and you actually can hear it in your head with Michael McDonald singing that melody, it actually makes perfect sense.
Yep.
Yeah, it could almost be like if it was produced a bit differently, maybe not so synthy, it could be almost a Doobie Brothers song. But look, I didn't love this song when I was young, a bit like Top Jimmy. I think I didn't really get it or something. But I actually really like it now for its simple pop kind of sensibility. I like it. It's never a skip. There's no songs on this album that I would skip, but I'll give it a 7.
Yep.
Well, this song, I'll wait. Takes me back a little bit. This song, there's some sentiment with this song for me, and it reminds me of certain points in my life. I've always loved that synth intro. I love the drumming in the song. David Lee Roth sings great to me. Like I actually think he sings great in it. Interesting the stuff you brought up there, Hos. A lot of that I was not aware of, which is obviously I haven't done my research on that, but I mean. There's parts of the song I love. I love the chorus. I love the way that they've worked the chorus out. I love the solo. There's some real tasty runs. The use of the whammy bar, etc. Like there's some really, really good parts of this song. I gave it a 7.5 out of 10, and it's never a skip for me. Okay. Andrew.
Yeah, this song is an interesting song because the girls always liked the song. It was a song that you could dance to, It's it's that song that Madonna, get into the groove, boy. And then you can play this song. Oh wait, on the same kind of set. It was that kind of song. It was a popular song from that perspective. And I have that those memory sentiments too, Brad, that you're talking about. So, but yeah, does it fit into the album? Of course it does, because it's got the synth. It's even, it's got here it is here, John. It's got the Oberheim on there, which is a crucial instrument that Eddie was infatuated with at the time. It fits. The song fits. God bless Hos for giving us a bit of the background to this song, because it's really, really important. Michael McDonald, that's important, because I can hear that too now, Hos, when you mention that, because he's got that high pitch kind of singing, so you can just imagine it,
Totally can.
Yeah. Yes.
You can totally hear it. Now, if you replace the Oberheim with a Rhodes, like Doobie Brothers style Rhodes, you would never even be able to tell it wasn't a Doobie song, I would think. But look, I agree with both you guys. I like it. Never a skip for me. I think now knowing all the history behind it actually makes it more interesting when I listen to it, not less interesting.
Yeah. So I look, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. And I'm going to go with the Rock Professor's theory here, and he watches all our reruns, so he's going to be happy that we've made a mention of him. But he's got this theory that one of your weakest songs is your second to last song on side 2. And I think his theory might be correct here on this album. So 7 out of 10, Hos and Brad, but never a skip.
Okay.
Oh, actually, it's not the second to last, is it? No.
Third last.
No. Oh, okay. So there goes my brilliant. Okay, no, I'm just looking at my notes here. It's the third song. Okay, I'll delete that.
Well, look, I think Simon, the Rock Professor, will still appreciate the sentiment there, Andrew. So.
Okay, I've changed this theory. It's the third song on side 2 that's the weakest song. Hos.
Yeah, look, I think so too. And honestly, if I was doing the sequencing for the album, if I was Ted Templeman or the record company, I think that's where I would have put it too. You'd put a weak song after you've you've had some incredible songs and you've still got a couple of really interesting things left. You sort of put it 2/3 of the way in, that's what I would do. But speaking of incredible songs, the next song, Girl Gone Bad, this is the song I was referring to earlier when I said that Ed and Valerie were in a hotel room.
Yes.
And and Ed came up with the idea in his head. And so he took his little cassette recorder into the closet and hummed, the main ideas for Girl Gone Bad into the closet. I find that incredible on a couple of levels. This song to me is how do I put this into words properly? This takes something like the groove of Hot for Teacher, which is obviously a really fast boogie or a swing. And Hot for Teacher is at for the muso nerds, is at about 260 beats a minute, right? So like that, sort of pretty fast. It would be, if you were going to compare it to like a real classic old big band song, Sing, 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 most people know, sing, 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 everybody. That's about the tempo of Hot for Teacher. Girl Gone Bad is more like jazz that came a little bit after that was way faster. And it was so fast that you start to lose the shuffle. You almost can't swing in between the beats. So what happens with super fast jazz, like John Coltrane or let's see, Sonny Rollins, like, all that kind of stuff, is the swing ends up straightening out. So what you get, instead of ding, 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 you get ding, 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 like that. And this one, Girl Gone Bad, is, if Hot for Teacher is at 260, this is at 305. This is fast. So that's why that ride cymbal thing that Alex does in the beginning when Ed's playing the harmonics, that so if you're clicking it on the offbeat like jazz, that's how fast it would be. So it's ding, 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 ding. So that's why Alex is flipping it and playing it straight and going ding, 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 like that. And all that they're doing is, when they come in with the chorus, is it's like playing a super fast, like a good example of a jazz song that a lot of jazzers or muso nerds would know, that's at about that speed, would be John Coltrane's Giant Steps. So, which is like 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, da 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 da. But really, even that Coltrane melody is da 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 da, upside down. So it's all the stuff that they would have listened to as kids, somehow subconsciously metamorphosizing into this psycho loud electric rock, and I think, to me, that's what always is the most exciting thing about Van Halen, is that depth of musicianship and that grounding in jazz and classical piano. That's what makes them sound like no other rock band ever, because a lot of bands can play, for example, Panama or Back in Black or this and that, but almost no one can properly play things like Hot for Teacher and Girl Gone Bad. And to me, it's because they grew up with jazz, and a lot of rock musicians don't. And some do, obviously, but a lot don't. I think Girl Gone Bad is also so dynamic. It goes from that super quiet intro, and then it just explodes into that chorus, which is mostly really about Mikey and Ed's BVs. The girl, while they're smashing it out. And then Roth doing his usual thing over the top. In fact, I can't remember where, I think it was on Dweezil Zappa's podcast. He was astounded that Roth could even come up with lyrics over that music, Look, I think it's amazing. I love Girl Gone Bad. To me, it's another one of those classic Van Halen songs that separates the men from the boys. 10 out of 10.
Wow. Yeah, I love this track too, Hos. And I've always thought it's a really powerful song. The tapping at the start, the harmonics, the tap harmonics, I just think it gives such a haunting feel over that. And the way Alex is playing the way he's doing that cymbal work is just sensational. The bass playing, there's just some great bass playing in it. The drum and guitar runs are the highlight for me, where it does those. I love that. Sensational playing. And I have to say, this really highlights the brotherhood of Ed and Al. I just think they obviously, you can hear the jazz backgrounds there, but you can hear they've been playing together their whole lives, basically, in this one song. The breakdown has a new feel for me. Like it changes again. The tones of Ed on this song are great. His techniques, there's so much of Ed's technique in this song. It's just sensational. The outro is so classy. Look, I have to give it a 10 out of 10. It's never a skip for me. Never a skip. Andrew.
Wow, what a great analysis, especially from Hos on the song. I have to agree with you guys, though. You know, it's no hidden fact, isn't it, if you're a Van Halen fan, that the Van Halens came from a jazz background through their father, through their dad. But clearly, Hos and Brad, these boys were listening to the jazz that was being played around the house. You know, they weren't just, it wasn't just being played, they were actually listening to it. And you know, we've spoken about this before, guys, when we've done shows, haven't we, Hos, about the jazz influence as it comes through the Van Halens. But this is the classic example of it, isn't it? You know, the fact that you talk about John Coltrane, you know, and you've got Miles Davis's bass player, who I can't remember, on Kind of Blue, you know, so you got that kind of stuff coming through. And you know, John Coltrane, as you said, Hos, you know, he was huge, you know, he was a hugely influential musician that everybody was listening to at that time. So again, I'm not surprised. But Brad, you've mentioned that, you know, the Van Halens playing together. This would have been something that they would have been doing when they were 13 years old, 14 years old. Yeah. And it was through Hos, it was through the ability that Ed had a studio where they could introduce this kind of stuff, because I'm sure they wanted to do this earlier. I'm sure they wanted to bring this in, because, as you said, no other rock band could have done what the Van Halens and Mikey and David did with this song. I've always loved this song, guys. I was lucky enough to be brought up with a father that loved a bit of jazz music too. So in my ear, when I was a young guy, I could hear this. And I'm being honest, you know, I couldn't quite pinpoint it, but I could hear it, because you know, you can hear it. The change, especially the change in tempos, and I'm not a musician, so I don't know the technical words, but in time structures and all that, clearly is a giveaway. It's a giveaway. Yeah. But I have to Brad score this. This is one of the shining examples of musicianship that nobody else was doing at the time. Hos and Brad, it's a Brad score, 100 out of 10.
Andrew, I just want to correct you on one thing, and I think we need to acknowledge the fact that you are a musician, and you're a very good musician, mate. So don't ever say not.
Yeah. Well, I don't know the technical terms. I'm just a blues guitarist, if that's okay. Yeah. I'm just a blues. Yeah. But
sorry.
Yeah, but the point that I want, the time structures and the time sequencing of the song clearly is a, you know, if you're a jazz or been listening to jazz, you can pick that up. Love it. Love the song.
Yeah, me too. And you know, at the start of the show, we were touching on that, you know, Ed's thoughts and some of Roth's thoughts about why their chemistry worked so well for so many years, but was always going to have a finite lifespan because it was going to burn itself out because of that fire and ice thing. But actually, one of the things I think they incredibly had in common, which is why, to me, what made Van Halen more unique than a lot of other rock bands, is that, to me, David Lee Roth totally had that old school jazz thing, that Louis Prima thing, you know, that which he obviously covered when he did Just a Gigolo, I Ain't Got No Body, was Louis Prima songs. And when you listen to the original, David Lee Roth's not really even changing it that much. It's pretty much that's how the song sounds. And you can tell that Roth grew up with that stuff too. He was like a Vegas showman, you know? And to me, he had enough of that kind of, you know, Louis Armstrong, Frank Sinatra, Louis Prima kind of thing, that it went perfectly with all these boogies that Al and Ed would come up with, you know? And I think that had they had someone like Sammy Hagar, or anybody else for that matter, right from the beginning, I don't know if we would have really seen that sense of humor and that kind of showmanship sort of flourish. And I think it was a match made in heaven, actually. And I think that I love the Sammy Hagar stuff too. And maybe it was time for a change so that they could write some different kinds of songs. But I mean, the energy between Roth and what everyone else was doing in the band, I think was the perfect fit, you know, because Roth was so unique, just like Ed and Al were, you know?
Yeah.
So, all right. That leaves us with the last song on the album, House of Pain. Not my favorite song on the record. I really like it. It's got a dark kind of sound about it. And it was, for anyone that doesn't know, it was actually written to go on to Van Halen 1 back in 1978. But according to Ed, only the main riff is pretty much exactly the same as when it was written in 78. And a lot of the rest, they kind of reworked at the 5150 studio to kind of bring it up to, you know, 1984 spec. I love it. I think that the solo section is absolutely just takes off. It's one of my favorite solo sections on any Van Halen song, actually. It just goes into that almost Girl Gone Bad level gallop, you know, and it's just, and Ed's just on fire. And Brad, you were mentioning earlier about, don't worry, there's plenty of songs on the album. No, it was you, Andrew. Plenty of songs on the album that aren't pieced together 2 bars at a time. Well, this is a great example of one of those. I love it a lot, but I don't know. It's one of those ones I fall in and out of love with, to be honest. Sometimes I really love it when I listen to it, but it kind of depends on my mood. Whereas the other ones don't depend on my mood. I could be in a crap mood and I'll still love the other songs, you know. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10, but still never a skip.
Ooh. Ooh. All right, Hos. Oof. All right. Well, when I listen to House of Pain, I picture it could have fitted on Fair Warning album. You know,
Yeah,
I
agree
could
with
have seen that album. The way the off-time guitar with the drums is great. The chugging rhythm is fantastic. The verses are very busy, but it works great. There's cool choruses. The harmonies are great. The second part of the solo, the double time, is my favorite part of the song.
It's awesome, isn't it?
Rhythmically, it kind of reminds me of Jimi Hendrix's Fire for some reason. I don't know if you have a listen to that, and you might pick that up as well. Not the solo, but the feel. But the solo is sensational. Bass playing is great. The outro guitar playing is just awesome. I personally think it's a great way to end the album. It's a killer album, and this, you know, if this song was sort of revisited from an old idea, I think they did a great job of it. And 10 out of 10 for me, never a skip. Andrew,
you know, what do they say? Hindsight's an interesting thing. Great album, one of the best albums ever, in my opinion, that David Lee Roth did with Van Halen, and where they could have gone with this album. The sky was the limit. Hos said at the introduction, rock and roll albums, some great rock and roll albums are created around controversy and discord within a band, and rumors. Fleetwood Mac, another classic example of a band falling to bits, just creating a great album. This album too. And then the Van Halen Part 2, which comes after this, is the complete opposite. A band that's in full sync, full harmony, on point together with the same agenda, go out and create another great album. Chapter 1, chapter 2, just complete mirror reversals of the process of what was happening behind the scene for the bands, which is always something that we love to talk about. But I'm glad that Brad mentioned that this song here could have fitted on other albums, because it's poignant, isn't it, that this song, which could have fitted on any other Van Halen album, was the last song on 1984 with David Lee Roth. Scripted perfectly until obviously we had a different kind of truth. Look, guys, thank you for allowing me to say that little bit. I never liked this song except for the solo for a long, long time. Love the solo, Brad. The solo is fantastic. I love it, and still do to this day. But I dig where Hos is coming from, because this song is a bit different, isn't it? It's a little bit different. It doesn't have the jazz vibe or the poppiness or that classic Van Halen, that we got hit with in the first 2 tracks of this album. So I dig where you're coming from, but I still have to give this a 10 out of 10. Great way to finish an album. 33 minutes of glory. Oh, what could have happened? Oh, what could have been with this band? But who would have thought Van Halen with Sammy Hagar would have done what it did?
Yeah, well, that's right. And if you had a time machine and could go back to then, it would be I mean, obviously now we know everything that happened after 1984 and this album, but it would have been, if I was older back then than I was, it would have been pretty scary for an adult Van Halen fan to see the band break up in front of your eyes and not know what's happening next. I mean, that would have been terrifying. I'm so glad I missed that.
Yeah, well, I was a young fellow when this album came out. So, I bought the album. I had the album, and me and my friends were listening to this album. And then, a lot of the information we were getting, came from rock DJs on rock stations. Oh, there's something happening with Van Halen. Oh, my gosh, then Just a Gigolo comes out. And what was the other song that David Lee Roth came out with? And it was like, oh, my gosh. How could this band break up after this album?
Yeah. What? I mean, you've got to remember that if Michael Jackson had not have released Thriller at that time, this album would have been number 1. That's
100%.
It was it was such an incredible record, and with their first number 1 single on it. So it would have been very strange for fans at the time to then see the band break up after their first number 1 single, And of course, Andrew, you were talking earlier about the music clips. They're having so much fun in those things. You would just never have dreamed that it was all this stuff was going on behind the scenes,
Yeah. Oh, look, it's in hindsight, we can look back and go, I mean, what could have been if David Lee Roth had stayed with them? The way I look at it is it was a great album to finish off that part of their career. That's all.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
It could have went either way. Obviously, they rekindled things with David Lee Roth in the future, but that seems like a completely different band to me with Wolf in it for different reasons. Not negative reasons either, but just it's different for me. It's not the same. So, but in a roundabout's way, it was a good swan song.
Oh, guaranteed.
It was, and Keith Campbell there in the chat is saying this put Van Halen on the lips of parents, grandparents worldwide. And it's true. And that's why, I mean, that wasn't the tour just before this called the Hide Your Sheep tour. So, it was, they were at their absolute peak, and the poppiness of Jump definitely exposed Van Halen to a brand new audience, and like Keith said, to parents and grandparents. But then the video clip of Hot for Teacher firmly established them on MTV, and look, it was an amazing record. One thing that this era, this time makes me really sad about, though, is that it breaks my heart that they took Michael Anthony's royalties off this record. I can't, I'll never understand why they did that. And I'll also never understand why Michael Anthony signed the document and agreed to it. I just think it's awful. But, obviously it was the bubbling of things that, as we now know, he'd end up getting replaced with Wolfie at some point,
Yeah, I agree. It's heartbreaking because, as we've discussed previously on this channel, that Michael Anthony was just a sweetheart of a guy. He never looked like he was ever going to cause problems in that band. He always seemed to be the easiest going one in the band, and he always just did what he had to do. And such an amazing guy, when I've watched interviews with him, he's always he never ever talks negative about Van Halen. He never talks negative about anyone. He's just one of those guys. I think is a lovely gentleman. So yeah,
and also, not only do you never hear Michael talking bad about anyone, despite all the things, I have not heard anyone in any book or in a documentary or anywhere online say one bad word about that guy. Nobody. So he's obviously a sweetheart, and you know, it's that it all sort of fell apart with him too from around this time. That's the one thing that this album marks for me, a bit of a change there, because they took his royalties off it. So that's this album in the back of my mind, unfortunately, is just kind of always that, because obviously it was a number 2 selling record and he got no money for it.
Yeah, well, he's a example of how we all should be, isn't it? Or should strive to be as men, women, music fans, as musicians. You know, to have people talk about you like that in a positive way is always something that we should strive to do without you know, getting too, what's the word, preachy. But I agree with you, Hos and Brad. I think it's fantastic. You know, certainly from my point of view, and I know a lot of cats in the chat would have been lamenting this demise of this great band, and then all of a sudden we get Van Halen 2 with Sammy Hagar, and all fears were put aside, all sadness put aside.
I tell you what, after what would have been terrifying for Van Halen fans around the world to come back out with 5150 and then Live Without a Net, oh my God, right? talk about shutting people up. That's not the right way to put it, actually. It's more like having everyone rejoice, you know?
What a turner. God, yeah, you couldn't have scripted anything like it, Brad. It was just, you know, when we heard the first single on Kiwi FM here, and then buying that, it was just like, holy cow.
Yeah. No, it was and wow, what monster smash hits on that record, you know. And it it's the fairy tale got to continue, didn't it? And you know what's funny, Brad, you were talking about Ed's Lamborghini Miura before. Well, of course it was Ed's exotic car mechanic that ended up suggesting Sammy, if I recall correctly. Ed was in the shop, and he had one of Sammy's Ferraris, I think, and Ed said, "Oh, whose car's that?" And he said, "Oh, it's Sammy Hagar's," which of course they knew from Montrose. I believe that was what sparked the idea to get together with Sammy over a car. So how rock and roll is that, you know?
Oh, it's well, you couldn't have scripted it any better.
No, exactly.
Guys, it's been phenomenal hanging out with you guys, talking about a great album. It's our contribution as Van Halen fans on the 5150 show, just to get together with 30 odd people. I think at one stage we had 35, 36 people joining us in the chat. We're just Van Halen fans, guys. Our channel's just about 3 guys and the odd guest every now and again, and all you guys joining us, just celebrating and sharing great music, and we're always humbled by it, and we always get blown away by your contributions, and also by the contributions by my co-hosts. Hos in particular has brought some great things to the table for us to consider.
Yeah, no worries. It's been a really, really fun show. It's an incredible album. It's so much fun to deep dive on it with everyone. And, of course, everybody in the chat. Thanks for deep diving with us and all the comments. It's been a blast for me to talk about it. That's for sure.
Holly.
I just wanted to, thank you so much for your in-depth analysis there. And I have to say, this has probably been one of my favorite deep dives of a Van Halen record we've done. So thank you so much, Hos.
It's my pleasure. It's like I said, it's an honor and a privilege to get to do it with you, both you gentlemen. So thank you for having me on and having me be a part of it. And I mean, look, it never gets boring talking about Van Halen, but especially with an album like this, that's just, it's right in that crossover period between 2 great eras of an incredible band. And yeah, it was forged in the fires of chaos, this album, and that's why it's so amazing, I think.
Well, if you guys play your cards right in the chat, we might do something in the next fortnight on the next 5150. We might follow the time frame theme and weld or mesh something in from the Van Halen history, from the legacy, and tie it into this album. We'll get together, guys, won't we, and work something else out. But yeah, I agree with you, Hos. It's been fantastic. I just get blown away by it. Always an enjoyable time hanging out with you guys.
Wonderful. Well, if you'd like, Andrew, I can do a shout out to everyone who joined us in the chat today. And, thank you, everyone, for sharing your thoughts with us. It's always awesome seeing you all in there. We got Kelly, TJ Reagan, hey, TJ, Tim Thomas, Gretch Zeppelin, Joe Occhipinti, my illustrious guitar tech and luthier. Danny Eddy, thanks for all your questions, brother. Keith Campbell, of course. Hayden, Fruitcake Tony was in there. Mikey Mojo, Helene, Michael also. Charmaine, Teresa, Ellen, Kenneth K, Christopher Live Sour, Thomas Santiago, Chris Hunter, Music Therapy Laz was in here. Hey, Laz. Jay Hannon was in here. I saw a 7/8 in the chat somewhere. Adam Roach, John Conklin. Thanks, John, for all your comments. Pete, Nina Farrow, of course, Hayden Crone, Yas Govan, Paulie Walnuts, Mark Effects, John ZD351, the most illustrious John ZD. Who else we got? Mike Rogers, Nelson Rodriguez, Johnny Bean rated us, of course, and we got Johnny Heartbreaker, Quinton James, and Kelly. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thanks, Hos.
Thank you, Hos. That's wonderful. We're going to be here around about.
Sorry, I just saw Holly.
Oh, hey, Holly. Good to see you, Holly. She's a good friend of the channel too. So if you guys want to share our channel with your friends and your social media accounts, that would be great. We're about 840 subs. We'd love to get 1,000 subs as soon as possible. You guys need to help us do that. We'll be here tomorrow. Brad and I, the Backdoor Man, will be with the Rock Professor in about an hour's time from now, talking about an album called Pile Driver by Status Quo. So I've been listening to that a couple of times over the last couple of days. I'm not familiar with that album. Some great songs on there, but we certainly look forward to what the Rock Professor has to say. Guys, are we out of here?
One quick thing from me, which I wanted to mention earlier, and I want to squeeze it in. Heartfelt shout out from all of us to Bent Tom, who, for anyone that doesn't know, is a wonderful follower of the show, but also a very, very sweet human being who we all get to call a friend now, who is going through some awful health issues, and I believe is now at home recovering. So Bent Tom, please, if you see this, our hearts all go out to you, brother. I hope you're getting better.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Thank you, bro, because I got some messages from Fruitcake Tony about him. So thank you for that shout out. Yeah, we do care about Bent because he's an awesome guy. He's this guy's a Van Halen nut. Bent Tom, he knows what color undies Eddie's was wearing in 1984. Yeah, his analysis and understanding of Van Halen goes deep too. So, and Sandra, thank you, Sandra, for joining us. You do great work. Sandra's awesome. She's attached to Fruitcake Tony and his crew. She operates a lot of scenes there, a lot of things behind the scenes for Fruitcake Tony. We're out of here, guys.
See you, everybody.
Where is it? Where is it? There it is. See you tomorrow.